The small cafe was alive with the soft hum of conversations and the clinking of coffee cups. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, catching the dust particles floating in the air, giving the room a golden glow. A corner of the cafe had an old, polished piano, a relic that many thought had seen better days. It wasn't often that someone played it, and most patrons barely noticed it, too absorbed in their own lives. Today, however, the piano would become the center of attention in a way no one expected. Among the patrons, a famous pianist had arrived, dressed in sharp, stylish clothes. His presence alone seemed to fill the room. People whispered, recognizing him immediately. He had a reputation for skill, charm, and a touch of arrogance. He enjoyed attention, and today he seemed to be looking for amusement. As he approached the piano, he scanned the room with a playful grin, as if daring someone to challenge him. In a quiet corner, unnoticed by most, sat a woman. She was simple in appearance, wearing a plain dress and her hair loosely tied back. She moved with a calm, gentle grace, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She had been coming to this cafe for months, enjoying its quiet atmosphere and the occasional music from the piano. She wasn't here to be seen or noticed. She was here because she loved music, and the piano had always been her secret companion. The pianist, spotting her, tilted his head and walked over, his grin widening. There was a teasing glint in his eyes as he gestured toward the piano. "Why don't you play something?" he said loudly, enough for nearby tables to hear. There was a hint of mockery in his tone, playful yet confident. The patrons turned their heads, curiosity piqued. Who was this simple woman, sitting so quietly, being called upon by a famous musician? She looked up, surprised by the sudden attention. Her heart skipped a beat, but she did not rise immediately. She was not used to the spotlight, and she certainly did not expect a challenge from someone so renowned. The room fell silent, as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting to see how she would respond. The pianist leaned slightly toward her, his voice softer but still carrying an edge of amusement. "Come on, don't be shy. Let's hear what you've got." He made a dramatic gesture toward the piano, as if offering her a chance to step into the world of music, but also daring her to fail. Laughter bubbled quietly among the audience, not unkindly, but with the same curiosity that comes when one anticipates an unexpected performance. She hesitated, looking down at the piano keys. Memories of her childhood flickered in her mind. Days spent in a quiet room, practicing in secret, learning to play by ear before she even understood sheet music. The piano had always been her escape, her joy, and her voice. No one had ever doubted her talent, simply because no one had ever seen it. And yet, today, she faced a room full of strangers and a famous musician who assumed she would falter. Slowly, almost reluctantly, she rose from her seat and walked toward the piano. Her movements were gentle, deliberate, showing a quiet confidence that was easy to miss if one didn't pay close attention. She sat on the bench, her fingers hovering over the keys for a brief moment. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, not for the pianist, not for the audience, but for the music that flowed through her. The first note she played was soft, almost hesitant, but it carried a warmth that immediately captured attention. The pianist raised an eyebrow, surprised. The note was clear, precise, and had a tone that suggested understanding, experience, and emotion. He had expected nervous fumbling, perhaps a timid attempt at a simple tune. Instead, the first sound she made was confident, gentle, and unexpectedly moving. The patrons shifted in their seats, leaning in as if drawn by an invisible thread of sound. The cafe, which had moments ago been filled with chatter, now held only the music and the soft murmur of appreciation. Her fingers moved gracefully across the keys, her body swaying slightly to the rhythm, though no one had yet discerned the full extent of her skill. There was a fluidity in her movements that came from years of private practice, a natural understanding of the instrument that required no showmanship. Each note seemed deliberate, as though she was telling a story only she could see, yet everyone could feel. The pianist, known for his sharp critique and playful arrogance, was momentarily silent. He watched her hands, the way they danced across the keys, the expression on her face as she lost herself in the music. His amusement faded into curiosity, then into something he had not expected, respect. This woman, so simple in her appearance, played with a mastery that belied her quiet demeanor. Around them, the audience began to murmur softly, impressed and slightly bewildered. Whispers spread like wildfire. "She's amazing. I didn't know she could play like that." The energy in the room shifted from amusement to fascination. No one had anticipated the depth of talent hidden in someone so unassuming. Even the regular patrons of the cafe, used to casual music, found themselves captivated, listening with rapt attention as if the music had transformed the space. The woman continued to play, each note gaining strength, confidence, and emotional weight. Her music was not just a series of sounds. It was a language, a story unfolding. She played with sensitivity and precision, combining technical skill with feeling, something that cannot be learned in a short time. It must be felt in the soul. The pianist's eyes widened slightly, and for the first time, he looked less like a performer and more like a student, witnessing the unexpected brilliance of another musician. As the piece progressed, the cafe seemed to shrink around them. Time itself seemed to pause as the music carried everyone to a place where appearances did not matter, only the beauty and power of the performance. Patrons leaned forward, unable to tear their eyes away from the piano, the source of this sudden revelation. Even the baristas and staff, usually focused on their duties, stopped to watch and listen, caught in the spell of her talent. The famous pianist, usually so confident and commanding, felt a mix of surprise, admiration, and humility. He had challenged her lightly, jokingly, expecting nothing more than a polite attempt or nervous fumbling. Instead, he found himself facing someone who could match, or even surpass, the skill he had spent a lifetime cultivating. It was a moment of reckoning, not just for him, but for everyone present. The woman, unaware of the shift in perception, played on, completely absorbed in her music, in the joy of sharing something deeply personal yet universally moving. As the final notes echoed through the cafe, there was a brief moment of stunned silence. Then, slowly, the room erupted into applause. Hands clapped, some stood up, and expressions of astonishment were everywhere. The pianist leaned back slightly, clapping as well, his smile no longer teasing but genuine. He had been proven wrong, and he could not hide his admiration. This quiet, simple woman had surprised everyone, and the impact of her performance would linger in the hearts of those who witnessed it. The woman lowered her hands, breathing gently, a soft smile on her face. She had played not to prove herself, not to gain attention, but because the music was a part of her, and it needed to be heard. In that moment, she realized that even the most unassuming person could make a profound impression, simply by sharing what they loved with honesty and grace. The cafe, once a place of casual chatter, had become a space of wonder, where talent and humility shone brighter than any display of fame or arrogance. The pianist approached her, offering a nod of respect. He no longer saw her as a simple woman, but as a musician with a story, a skill, and a depth he could not ignore. The patrons continued to whisper and clap, their eyes shining with the thrill of witnessing something unexpected and unforgettable. And in that small cafe, on that quiet afternoon, a simple woman had shown the world that true talent cannot be hidden forever, and that sometimes, the greatest surprises come from the most unassuming places. The applause had barely settled when the cafe seemed to return to its usual rhythm, though the energy in the air had changed. Patrons whispered among themselves, exchanging astonished looks. No one had expected such skill from someone so quiet and simple. The famous pianist lingered by the piano, his expression unreadable, yet his eyes followed the woman as she stood slowly from the bench. She offered a gentle nod to the crowd, her cheeks slightly flushed, but her calm demeanor remained. She had played because the music needed to be played, not for the applause or attention. A few curious onlookers approached her cautiously, not wanting to startle her but eager to speak. They asked questions about her background, whether she had formal training, and how long she had been playing. Each time, she answered softly, almost shyly, yet her words carried a quiet confidence. She had been practicing piano since childhood, mostly alone. Music had been her companion through difficult times, a friend she could rely on when the world seemed overwhelming. The thought that anyone would see her perform publicly, let alone in front of a famous pianist, had never crossed her mind until now. The pianist, who had watched the small gathering with a mixture of curiosity and surprise, finally spoke. His voice was softer than before, tinged with genuine interest. "I didn't expect that," he said. "You play beautifully. How long have you been practicing?" She looked at him, meeting his eyes briefly before returning her gaze to the piano. "Since I was very young," she replied simply. "I never performed for anyone professionally. Music has always been my personal world." He nodded slowly, a subtle shift in his demeanor. The teasing arrogance that had defined him moments ago was replaced with something else: respect. He gestured toward the piano again, this time without mockery. "Would you play something else? Something more challenging?" The woman hesitated for a moment. She had not come here to compete or show off, but there was a strange pull in the air, a shared understanding between two people who loved music. She nodded gently, returning to the piano bench. As her fingers touched the keys, the room seemed to hold its breath once more. This time, she began with a simple melody, but gradually, she added layers of complexity. Her fingers moved with precision, yet there was warmth and emotion in every note. The cafe's usual background chatter faded into silence, as if the music had absorbed everyone's attention. Each note told a story of quiet persistence, of private dedication, and the beauty that comes from years of unnoticed effort. The pianist watched closely, occasionally leaning forward to catch a subtle shift in her technique or an unexpected flourish. It was clear that she was not only skilled but deeply connected to the music. He had played on many stages, in front of thousands, and yet there was something refreshing about the authenticity of her performance. She did not seek validation or praise. She played because the music demanded it, and that sincerity resonated with everyone in the room. The audience began to react, their whispers turning into murmurs of admiration. Some nodded, some smiled, others simply sat in awe, unable to take their eyes off her hands as they danced across the keys. The woman's focus never wavered. She was in a zone where nothing else existed except the music. Her expressions changed subtly with each passage, reflecting the emotions she felt and wanted to share. There was a story unfolding through sound, one that no words could capture, yet everyone felt it deeply. The pianist, usually quick with comments and jokes, was silent. He realized he had underestimated her. Her performance was not about impressing others or showing off. It was about connection, about bringing the audience into a world they had never fully appreciated before. He felt a twinge of humility, recognizing that true mastery often hides in the quietest of people, waiting for the right moment to shine. As the piece continued, she began to add subtle improvisations, weaving her own interpretations into the familiar structure of the music. Each variation was intentional, demonstrating not only technical skill but creativity and confidence. The audience leaned in further, sensing that something extraordinary was happening. The air seemed charged with anticipation, every note a small revelation. The woman's hands moved with grace and agility, yet there was no rush, no unnecessary flourish. The music flowed naturally, a seamless blend of control and freedom. The cafe's atmosphere transformed completely. What had been a casual gathering of coffee drinkers and students was now a miniature concert hall, alive with emotion and attention. People who had been chatting quietly now listened intently, their eyes and ears fully engaged. Halfway through, the pianist quietly took a seat nearby, no longer mocking, no longer a performer seeking attention. He became part of the audience, witnessing a display of talent that surpassed his expectations. He noticed small details, the way her fingers curved perfectly around the keys, the subtle shifts in timing that added tension and release, the way her expression mirrored the music's emotional highs and lows. It was rare to see someone play with such mastery and heart simultaneously. Some patrons began to quietly record small clips on their phones, careful not to disturb the moment. Social media, if they were to share this, would soon be filled with astonishment. Yet no one wanted to interrupt the magic. Even those who had come in casually, expecting nothing more than a cup of coffee, were now completely absorbed. Every note seemed to carry weight, every pause invited reflection, and every crescendo left a palpable thrill in the room. As she approached the finale of her piece, the music swelled with emotion. Her fingers flew across the keys with precision, yet every note retained a warmth that made the performance feel personal, intimate. The cafe seemed to pulse with the sound, as if the walls themselves were listening. The pianist, still seated quietly, allowed himself a smile, acknowledging the beauty and sincerity of what he was witnessing. Finally, the last note lingered, fading slowly into silence. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. The audience, caught in the aftermath of something extraordinary, simply sat, breathing, absorbing the impact of the performance. Then, as if released from a spell, applause erupted. Hands clapped, voices cheered, and a few stood to offer their admiration. The pianist, now fully attentive, stood and joined in the applause, his face reflecting respect and a newfound appreciation. The woman stood once again, her smile gentle, almost shy, yet satisfied. She had played not for recognition, not for praise, but for the music itself. And in doing so, she had touched everyone present in a way that words could not describe. The room, which had moments ago been filled with casual chatter and curiosity, was now united by a shared experience, a moment of awe and admiration. The pianist approached her, his usual confident demeanor softened. He offered a nod, not as a challenge, but as acknowledgement of her talent. "You have a gift," he said quietly. "It is rare to see someone play with such honesty and skill." The woman simply nodded, her humility intact, letting the music speak louder than any words could. The cafe returned slowly to its normal rhythm, but the memory of what had happened would linger long after, for both the patrons and the pianist himself. In the quiet moments afterward, as she gathered her things and prepared to leave, several people came forward to express their admiration. She thanked them softly, her voice gentle, never boastful. She knew that talent alone was not enough to define her. It was her love for music, her dedication, and her humility that truly shaped her performance. The pianist watched her go, a sense of respect and reflection lingering. He had been reminded that true skill could come from unexpected places, and that the most remarkable performances were often the ones that carried the heart of the player. As the cafe slowly emptied, and the sunlight faded, the woman stepped outside, the music still echoing in her mind. She walked quietly through the streets, her heart light with the satisfaction of sharing something deeply personal. She did not seek fame or recognition. The joy of music, and the connection it created, was enough. And somewhere nearby, a famous pianist had learned a lesson in humility and the power of unexpected talent. A reminder that greatness is not always loud or obvious, but often quiet and profoundly moving. The cafe settled into a quieter rhythm after the woman's performance, but the energy remained different. Patrons lingered, whispering to each other about what they had just witnessed. The air seemed charged, as if the music had left an invisible mark on everyone present. The famous pianist remained near the piano, watching her with a mix of admiration and curiosity. He had expected a brief, simple display at most, but what he had witnessed was something rare and extraordinary. The woman had stepped away from the piano, but the music still lingered in her mind. She walked slowly through the cafe, her fingers unconsciously brushing the edge of the piano bench, remembering the feel of the keys beneath her hands. Music had always been her escape, her secret world, and now, unexpectedly, it had become a bridge to the outside world. People stared at her, but she remained modest, offering polite smiles rather than explanations. Her love for music was genuine, not performative. A few patrons, emboldened by curiosity and admiration, approached her. They asked questions in hushed tones, wanting to know more about her background, her training, and the years she had spent perfecting her skill. She answered simply, revealing only enough to satisfy their curiosity, not seeking attention or praise. She had been learning piano since she was very young, mostly alone, relying on determination and love for music rather than formal instruction. The years of practice had become second nature to her, a quiet discipline that shaped her days and nights. The pianist, still standing near the piano, finally stepped forward. His usual confident, almost teasing demeanor had softened. He spoke to her quietly, careful not to draw unnecessary attention. "You have an incredible gift," he said. "I've performed in many places, met countless musicians, but rarely have I seen someone play with such sincerity and skill. Would you mind playing something else? I'd like to hear more." She looked at him, slightly surprised by the request. She had played because it felt right, because the music needed to be heard, not because anyone had asked. But there was something in his tone, respectful, genuine, without mockery, that made her consider it. She nodded softly and returned to the piano bench. As she sat down, her fingers hovered over the keys, ready to create once more. The first notes she played were soft, almost tentative, but they quickly grew in confidence and complexity. Each sound was precise, yet infused with emotion. She added subtle variations and flourishes, demonstrating both technical skill and creativity. The cafe, which had moments ago returned to casual chatter, was once again silent, all eyes on her hands and the music they produced. It was a rare performance that combined technical mastery with emotional depth, capturing the hearts of everyone present. The pianist observed quietly, analyzing her technique. He noticed small details, the way her fingers curved naturally, the subtle dynamics she introduced, the pauses that created tension and release. Every movement seemed deliberate yet effortless. He realized that her skill was not just a product of practice but also of intuition and deep understanding. She had internalized music in a way few musicians ever did, blending knowledge and feeling seamlessly. The audience's reactions were a mixture of awe and curiosity. Some whispered to each other, marveling at how someone so unassuming could produce such extraordinary music. Others simply sat, mesmerized, unable to take their eyes off the piano. The woman's performance had transformed the cafe into a space of quiet reverence, where the music itself spoke louder than words. As she progressed through her piece, she began to introduce improvisations. These were not random notes or showy tricks, but thoughtful, creative additions that enhanced the music's emotional impact. Each variation revealed a new layer of her understanding and sensitivity, capturing the audience in a way that left them both surprised and deeply moved. The pianist, who had been so certain of his own skill, found himself studying her play, learning from her subtle artistry. Her confidence grew with each passing moment. She was no longer merely responding to the challenge. She was expressing herself fully through the piano. The audience felt the change, sensing her complete immersion in the music. Even the staff of the cafe, usually focused on their duties, paused to witness the unfolding performance. The atmosphere was transformed, the ordinary space now alive with creativity and emotional resonance. The woman's hands moved with grace and precision, yet the music felt alive and spontaneous. Every note had purpose, every pause was meaningful, and every chord carried a subtle emotional weight. The pianist, watching her intently, realized that her talent extended beyond technical ability. It was a deep, intuitive understanding of the music itself. She had taken something ordinary, a simple piano, and turned it into a vessel for emotion and storytelling. Patrons continued to murmur quietly, their admiration growing. Some took out their phones to capture small snippets, careful not to disrupt the moment. There was a sense of shared wonder, a collective recognition that they were witnessing something unique. The music reached its climax, a blend of technical brilliance and heartfelt expression that left everyone in the cafe breathless. When the final notes faded, there was a pause. Silence hung in the air, heavy with the impact of the performance. Then, slowly, applause erupted. It began softly, then grew into a steady, heartfelt ovation. People clapped, cheered, and some even stood, their faces alight with amazement. The pianist joined in, his applause genuine, his expression reflecting both respect and humility. He had been proven wrong in the best possible way, and he could not hide his admiration. The woman rose from the piano once more, her hands gently resting on the bench. She smiled softly, not seeking recognition, but acknowledging the warmth and appreciation of the audience. She had played because she loved music, because it was an expression of herself, not because she wanted to impress anyone. The impact of her performance, however, had reached far beyond her intentions. The pianist approached her again, this time with a different kind of presence. He was no longer the teasing, confident performer who had issued a challenge. Instead, he was respectful, thoughtful, and genuinely interested in her skill. "You have a rare talent," he said quietly. "Few people can combine such technical skill with emotion. It's inspiring to watch someone play with such sincerity." She nodded, her humility intact. "I've always loved music," she replied softly. "It's been my companion, my way of expressing feelings I can't put into words. I never thought I would play for anyone outside my own home." The audience continued to observe, sensing a quiet lesson in humility and the power of genuine talent. The cafe, once filled with casual chatter and the clinking of cups, had become a space of shared admiration and reflection. People realized that true skill could come from the most unexpected places, and that quiet, unassuming individuals could surprise the world in remarkable ways. As she prepared to leave the piano bench, a few patrons approached her to express their admiration personally. She thanked them quietly, her demeanor gentle and sincere. The pianist remained nearby, reflecting on what he had witnessed. He had always prided himself on his own talent and recognition, but this encounter reminded him that true greatness often existed quietly, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. The woman stepped away from the piano, leaving behind not just the instrument but also an impression that would linger long after she had gone. Patrons continued to discuss her performance in hushed tones, sharing their astonishment and respect. The pianist, now fully attentive, knew that he had experienced something extraordinary. A reminder that skill, passion, and humility could combine to create moments of unexpected beauty and lasting impact. As the cafe returned slowly to its usual rhythm, the woman walked quietly through the doors, the music still echoing in her mind. She had shared a part of herself, something deeply personal and profoundly moving, without seeking fame or recognition. The experience had changed her in small ways, strengthening her confidence and reinforcing her love for music. Outside, the world continued, but within the hearts of those who had witnessed her performance, a memory had been created. A memory of quiet talent, unexpected brilliance, and the transformative power of music. The cafe had settled into a calm hum once more, yet the atmosphere remained different from any ordinary day. Patrons whispered in quiet tones, replaying the woman's performances in their minds. What had begun as a casual afternoon of coffee and conversation had transformed into an unforgettable experience. Everyone seemed to carry a small spark of astonishment, a memory of unexpected brilliance that lingered in the air. The famous pianist, who had initially issued a playful challenge, stood nearby, his expression a mix of admiration and curiosity. The woman, sitting quietly at her table, seemed unaware of the ripple she had created. She was modest and gentle, her presence calm despite the attention surrounding her. Music had always been her refuge, a place where she could express herself without fear or expectation. Yet, today, that private passion had touched an audience in a profound way, revealing a talent that had long been kept hidden. She sipped her tea slowly, letting the warmth settle, and reflected on the connection she had felt with the piano and the people listening. A sudden movement at the entrance caught her attention. A few patrons had arrived late and were drawn immediately to the piano, curious about the performance they had missed. Their eyes widened as they witnessed the woman sitting gracefully at the bench, her fingers poised above the keys. Whispers of astonishment rippled through the room. It was clear that her reputation had already begun to spread within the cafe. People leaned forward, eager to see and hear more, their anticipation building. The pianist, noticing the new audience, stepped forward with a gesture of encouragement. "She has a remarkable gift," he said quietly, yet firmly, addressing those who were just arriving. "You are about to witness something special." His words carried weight, as they came not from a casual observer but from someone deeply familiar with the demands of musical mastery. The newcomers exchanged glances, intrigued, their curiosity piqued by the combination of his reputation and her growing recognition. The woman rose slowly from her seat, moving toward the piano with a sense of calm purpose. Her presence commanded attention without effort. As she sat on the bench, her fingers hovered over the keys for a brief moment, almost as if she were greeting an old friend. The room held its collective breath, waiting to experience once again the magic of her music. She began to play, this time with a confident flow that suggested she had fully embraced the moment. Each note was deliberate, precise, and filled with emotion, weaving a story that touched the hearts of everyone present. As the performance continued, the complexity of her music deepened. She incorporated variations and subtle improvisations, demonstrating a level of mastery that left the audience spellbound. The cafe seemed to disappear around them, replaced by a world defined entirely by sound and emotion. Patrons were silent, their eyes fixed on the piano, captivated by the skill, grace, and passion that radiated from the woman. Even the staff paused in their work, drawn into the unfolding musical narrative. The pianist watched intently, a mixture of awe and humility on his face. He had seen countless performances, yet he had rarely encountered someone who could blend technical brilliance with emotional depth so seamlessly. Her improvisations were not mere displays of skill but thoughtful expressions that conveyed her understanding of the music's essence. Each phrase, each pause, was a window into her mind and heart, allowing the audience to experience the music as she did. Suddenly, she shifted the melody, introducing a passage that was unexpected and daring. It was a complex sequence, one that required both precision and creativity. The pianist's eyes widened as he recognized the difficulty and the confidence with which she played it. The audience leaned in further, sensing the boldness and ingenuity of the music. A hush fell over the cafe, broken only by the sound of the piano, which seemed to fill every corner of the space. This was no longer simply a performance. It was a revelation. As she continued, the music built to a powerful crescendo. Her fingers moved with speed and accuracy, yet every note retained a warmth and expressiveness that made the performance profoundly human. The audience responded instinctively, their emotions mirroring the intensity of the music. Some held their breath, some closed their eyes, and others simply watched, captivated by the combination of skill and heart. The pianist could feel the impact of each note, each chord, and each phrase. He realized that he had not only witnessed talent but had been part of a shared emotional experience. The woman then transitioned to a softer, more reflective passage. The sudden change in tone drew the audience in, creating a sense of intimacy and connection. It was as if she were speaking directly to each person, sharing a story of quiet resilience and hidden strength. The room was silent except for the music, and the weight of the performance settled over everyone like a gentle embrace. The pianist, deeply moved, nodded subtly, acknowledging the emotional power of her artistry. As the performance neared its conclusion, she introduced a final, unexpected flourish. The complexity and creativity of the passage left the audience in awe, their admiration growing with each note. The music flowed naturally to its final chord, which lingered in the air like a whispered secret. For a moment, no one moved or spoke, caught in the afterglow of the performance. Then, slowly, applause erupted, heartfelt and sustained, filling the cafe with a sense of collective appreciation. The pianist stood alongside the audience, clapping enthusiastically, his eyes reflecting respect and humility. He approached the woman, his voice low and sincere. "I underestimated you," he said. "That was extraordinary. You have a rare talent, and your understanding of music is inspiring. I've performed in many places, but witnessing someone play with such authenticity is a true gift." She smiled softly, her humility intact. "I have always loved music," she replied quietly. It has been my companion and my way of expressing what words cannot. I never played for recognition, only for the joy it brings." The audience continued to reflect on the performance, exchanging glances and quiet remarks. They realized that they had been part of something unique, a moment where hidden talent and passion had transformed an ordinary space into an extraordinary experience. The cafe had become more than a place for coffee. It was now a place where inspiration and human connection had been made tangible through music. As she gathered her belongings, patrons approached her to express their admiration. She thanked them graciously, her demeanor calm and sincere. The pianist remained nearby, thoughtful and reflective. He had learned an important lesson. True mastery is not always loud or obvious, and even the most unassuming individuals can possess remarkable talent. The experience had humbled him and reminded him of the beauty of genuine artistry. Stepping outside into the late afternoon light, the woman felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. She had shared a part of herself, something deeply personal and profoundly moving, and it had been received with appreciation and respect. The echoes of the music lingered in her mind, a reminder of the connection she had created with the audience and the pianist. Her life would continue quietly, but now enriched with the knowledge that her talent could touch and inspire others in ways she had never imagined. Behind her, the pianist reflected on the events of the day. He had come expecting amusement, a casual performance, perhaps even to assert his own skill. Instead, he had witnessed something rare, something that reminded him of the true purpose of music: to communicate, to connect, and to inspire. Both he and the audience had been transformed, their perception of talent and humility forever shifted. The cafe had returned to normal, yet the memory of what had occurred would remain with everyone present, a lasting testament to the power of passion, skill, and authenticity. The cafe had slowly returned to its usual rhythm, the clinking of cups and quiet conversations gradually resuming. Yet, something had changed. The memory of the woman's extraordinary performance lingered in the minds of everyone present. People exchanged whispers and smiles, still recalling the emotion and skill that had filled the room earlier. The piano, once a simple piece of furniture, now held a presence of its own, as if it had been transformed by her touch. The woman sat quietly at her table, reflecting on what had just happened. She had never sought recognition or applause, yet today, her passion had reached out and touched so many people. Her hands, now resting on the table, still carried the faint memory of the keys beneath them. Music had always been a personal journey, a way to express what words could not convey. Today, however, it had become something shared, something that had connected her to a larger world in a way she had never imagined. The famous pianist remained near the piano, his expression thoughtful. He had come expecting amusement, a casual performance that would entertain him and perhaps show off his own skill. Instead, he had been humbled by a quiet, unassuming woman who had played with depth, creativity, and emotion that transcended technique alone. He had always prided himself on mastery, on being recognized and admired, but today he had been reminded that true artistry is as much about heart as it is about skill. Patrons lingered, some leaving slowly, others lingering to speak with the woman, their admiration sincere and respectful. They asked her about her journey with music, about how she had developed such skill in relative secrecy. She answered softly, never boasting, simply sharing what felt necessary. She spoke of long hours of practice, of small joys discovered in quiet rooms, and of the comfort music had always brought her. Her words were humble but powerful, reinforcing the sense that her talent was genuine and rooted in love rather than ambition. The pianist approached her once more, his voice calm but sincere. "I have performed in many places and seen countless musicians, but few have moved me the way you have today," he said. "You remind me that music is more than applause or recognition. It is about connection, honesty, and the courage to express oneself fully." She smiled, acknowledging his words without any hint of pride. "Music has always been my way of speaking when words were not enough," she replied. "I never thought I would play for an audience like today, but I am glad it could be shared. That is all I ever hoped for." Around them, the cafe buzzed quietly with reflection. People who had come for a casual afternoon had experienced something extraordinary. They had witnessed not just a display of technical skill, but an expression of authenticity and emotional depth that resonated deeply. The memory of her performance would stay with them, a reminder that greatness can emerge from the most unexpected places, and that humility and passion often create the most profound impact. The woman rose to leave, her movements gentle and composed. Patrons approached her with kind words, expressions of awe, and small gestures of respect. She thanked them quietly, acknowledging their admiration without allowing it to define her. Her journey with music had always been personal, yet she had discovered today that sharing her gift could inspire and move others in ways she had not imagined. The pianist lingered, watching her leave. He felt a quiet sense of gratitude, having witnessed something rare and beautiful. The encounter had reminded him of the true purpose of music: to communicate, to touch hearts, and to create moments of shared humanity. He reflected on his own journey, realizing that skill alone is not enough. Authenticity, humility, and connection are what truly define greatness. As she stepped outside, the afternoon light falling softly around her, she felt a calm satisfaction. The experience had been transformative, both for herself and for those who had witnessed her talent. She walked through the streets quietly, carrying the memory of the performance and the sense of connection it had created. Music had opened a door to a shared experience, one that reminded everyone present that beauty and talent are often found where least expected. In the following days, the story of her performance spread quietly among patrons and through small social circles. People spoke of the unexpected brilliance they had witnessed, the humility and depth of her playing, and the way it had moved them. The pianist himself shared his admiration, acknowledging her skill and the emotional impact of her performance. The recognition was not about fame or notoriety, but about appreciation and respect for a talent that had emerged with sincerity and grace. For the woman, life returned to its quiet rhythm, but with a subtle difference. She continued her practice, her music remaining a personal refuge, yet she now understood the power of sharing her gift. She had seen firsthand how authenticity and passion could inspire, how quiet dedication could create profound impact. The memory of the audience's reaction, the pianist's respect, and the warmth in the room remained with her, a gentle affirmation that her path in music, though humble and unassuming, mattered deeply. The pianist, reflecting on the experience, began to approach his own performances with renewed perspective. He had been reminded that talent and recognition are not the same, and that true mastery involves connecting with the heart of the music and the hearts of listeners. The encounter had shifted his understanding, reinforcing that humility and authenticity can create moments that linger far longer than any applause or accolades. In the small cafe, the piano remained, its keys carrying the faint echo of her touch. Patrons who returned would remember the afternoon when ordinary life was interrupted by extraordinary talent. They would recall the simple woman who played with grace, skill, and depth, leaving an indelible impression on everyone present. The cafe, once a space for casual conversation, had become a place of inspiration and reflection, a testament to the power of quiet brilliance. And in her own quiet way, the woman continued her journey with music. She played for herself, for the joy it brought, and occasionally shared it with those who would listen. The experience had taught her that talent, when paired with humility and sincerity, could touch lives in ways she had never imagined. She had faced a challenge, embraced it with grace, and revealed a hidden brilliance that would be remembered long after the applause had faded. The story of that day became a quiet legend, not because of fame or spectacle, but because it was real, human, and deeply moving. The woman's music, her humility, and her quiet confidence left a lasting impression, reminding everyone that greatness often lies in simplicity, and that the most profound moments are created not by those who seek recognition, but by those who act with authenticity and love for what they do. The pianist, the patrons, and even the small cafe itself had been touched, forever carrying the memory of a performance that was extraordinary not just in skill, but in heart.